All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another week of How Do We Go Forward? How Do We Go Back? A series of conversations about returning to academia during the fall of 2020. Tonight, I am absolutely delighted to introduce Trina Phillips and Amy Schmidt. Trina is the program coordinator for the City Cohort of Columbus in the Office of Diversity and Inclusion Young Scholars Program. She completed her Bachelor's of Science in Education at Bowling Green State University and is currently working to complete the Masters of Social Work program at OSU. Trina has taught in private, public, and chartered K-12 schools, as well as adult education, co-instructed study skills seminars, team and organizational leadership, and leadership from service classes at OSU. Amy Schmidt is the academic program coordinator at the Department of Dance at Ohio State University and serves as a BFA and minor student advisor, course curriculum manager, and undergraduate and graduate student committee support. She completed her Master of Fine Arts in Dance at The Ohio State University with a concentration in directing from Lava Notation School. Hooray! And moving down to here. Big fun. Amy is an annual guest lecturer in dance analysis and notation at the Graduate Institute of Applied Linguistics in Dallas, Texas, and is a freelance dance videographer and editor. She's blissfully married to Matthew Schmidt and mother of David and Eleanor. Amy and Trina tonight are going to be talking about administration, departmental, school level, otherwise. But first, I just want to start off with, how are you both doing? What is life like for you right now?
You go ahead, Trina.
Okay, I will go. It's different. There are a lot of moving pieces in my life right now, just being in school, but then also in the position that I work with. It's just kind of one of those things where you think, okay, this is the direction we're going to take. Then there is a shift, a mandate, a requirement, or something that comes down from those in authority or above me. And so then it's like, okay, we have to shift gears again. Let's try and see if this will work. So just kind of keeping me on my toes for sure. But other than that, I have ways of practicing self-care. And so I try my best to make sure that I'm doing that, because right now things are a little crazy.
Same here. It's a lot of adjusting and then readjusting, setting, and then resetting, and then moving forward, moving back, moving to the side, and moving to the other side. Balancing life and work has a kind of whole different meaning when it's all rather two-dimensional on a screen. And yeah, I have young ones at home. I have a spouse who teaches. I'm in administration. We're all somehow doing some kind of education-y thing and seeing like pros and cons of this school is doing that, or they're doing this sort of thing for that age group, or well, what do we do now about this, or what do we do now about that? So it in some ways it feels like it's a constant moving carpet, and in other ways it feels like we're all just sort of stuck in waiting mode for what's the next thing that we have to respond to. Part of my self-care is usually stepping away from the screen. Attempting to be offline is the only way to do that. I am very grateful that this is happening in a relative pleasant weather kind of time of year. I sometimes shudder to think, what if we have to do this when it's cold and nobody can go outside, or nobody wants to be outside? But for now, it's okay. It's okay. Lots of weeping, lots of laughing, lots of rolling on the floor and saying, "Oh well." Yeah. Well, I was going to ask Trina about how her office is having to deal with not just how to coordinate with a university kind of administration, but she's also got to deal with young people, high schooler administration, and that's a whole another bailiwick.
It is, Amy. It's like, and I guess just like you said, there's just so many moving parts in trying to find that balance. So in my position, I work at the university for the university, but the students that I serve, the population that I serve, are students that are in the city school district. So I have a few students that attend some of the suburb districts, but most of the students that I serve are in the city school district. And so having to navigate what their mandate is and having to navigate what Ohio State's mandate is in trying to find this marriage, um, yeah, there's no rings that are fitting right now. Um, So I have weekly meetings with my director, and so we have conversations. So not only the position that I do is actually in 8 other cities in Ohio. So we work with students in Akron, Canton, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Columbus, Dayton, Lorain, um, Toledo, and Youngstown. And so again, we are working with the university, Ohio State University, but then our students are in the pipeline to attend Ohio State University. So we're navigating all of these public city schools as well as what Ohio State is saying we can and cannot do. And so that has been a little different, because once one thing comes down, we're like, okay, we can do this, and then this side says something, we're like, well, we can't do that, we got to do this. And so yeah.
Give a few maybe nuts and bolts examples for what's going on between the students and the university.
I'm sorry, give an example of.
Yeah, can you give some examples of what kind of, like, what the students need, what the universities are trying to juggle?
Right. So for instance, Ohio State is they have, and Amy, you might know the exact number, but they're giving exact numbers for how many people can be in classrooms. And so I actually hold the workshops that I have with my students on campus. But we also, my program also, so say for instance, if Dublin City Schools or Columbus City Schools cancel school, any type of programming that I have is canceled. So it's for instance, right now, my high schoolers won't be going back into the classroom. So if they're not going back into the classroom in their city school, does that mean that any activities that they have with me won't be in the classroom on campus? And then at the same time, whatever the regulations and requirements are for campus, and even the building that I usually hold my workshops in, will I be able to hold them there? Because right now, pretty much everyone that works in my building is teleworking right now. And it's highly, highly likely that they will not be returning to the office anytime soon. So that's one of the things that I'm navigating now, is if I will have to continue to have Zoom workshops. And usually I would go to the individual, my student schools, and have one-on-one meetings with them there, face-to-face, great conversation. They get out of class. And now with them not actually going to the school building, am I going to do that just over the phone? Am I going to require them to do a Zoom session where we're having that face to face? So yeah, those are just a few of what I'm working with, trying to navigate between the two institutions.
Amy, I know you also work with a bunch of incoming freshmen. I'm sure you have thoughts about that.
Yeah, we have those same, like, is it real time, real space? And how do we do that safely? Or is it virtual, asynchronous time and space? And what are the limitations of that? So, some of the students, I'm sure that Trina works with as well, they're like, we have one device to share in our household for all of the things that everyone in that household has to do: learning, meetings, work. everything. And then others that are like, I have 5 different devices. It's just, is our internet bandwidth, strong enough to handle all these simultaneous things? And especially for working in the dance program, everyone, many of them have been dancing in their living rooms, doing Zoom classes with their studios, with, friends and all of these different things. And they're all kind of tired of their own four walls and want to get out there, someplace where they might actually, be able to stretch completely, or perhaps do a jump without hitting something. And so the return to campus and how to do that safely, like, how do you sanitize specialty floor? How do you make sure that everyone stays within a 10-foot, bubble? Do you make people wear masks, which has its own, risks when you're doing a strenuous activity? We have students that are international that are planning to join the program. Can they get a visa? Is their embassy doing visa appointments? So many things. It feels like, despite technology being able to keep doing a lot of things, we're still taking a long time. Like, I feel almost analog sometimes with, okay, well, we have to wait for this, and then in order to do that, and so now we must, wait for someone to respond about that. Again, with all of the back and forth of all the different offices. Well, the university says this. Well, the department says this. Well, the parents are asking this, and the students are asking that. It's a lot to navigate between, and it seems to remarkably take more time. One of the things I'm trying to live with right now is mystery. Mystery is a blessing and a curse. And I'm a planner, and I really like to be able to say, all right, this is the plan. Now we do this, 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 and this. But because this is something that none of us are able to control, what do we do? And you can either choose to be miserable, or you can choose to take one step at a time. And so a lot of what I do is talking with individual parents, individual students, talking to my department chair, talking to my faculty, talking to my colleagues, both in the department and across the university, to say, what are you doing? What are you able to do? If you're nervous about this, what if we try that? And yeah, that has a different kind of fatigue. Yeah, that I know you're experiencing as well, Trina.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head, Amy, when you talk about we're dealing with something that we can't control. And I think individually we know that, in our own space and energy and time. Our parents know that we have no control over this. Our professors, our instructors, everyone knows this, but at the same time, because we are used to some type of control and direction, it's kind of like this, okay, you're in charge, so you have to know what's going on. Like, I have my students, like, okay, well, you work at the university, so I know you know what's going on. And I'm like, hey guys, some of this I'm finding out the same time as you are. And Amy, you know this, we may find out something maybe on 10 TV news, and literally 1 minute later, then the email comes through and it's like, oh, they're talking about this. And so, but in our parents' mind, in our students' mind, even in some of our community stakeholders that are partnered with us and collaborate with us, they're like, well, you're at the university, surely you know what's going to happen. And I'm just like, no, I don't. And it's the same way with the other institution. People will say, well, Ms. Trina, I know you know the principal at such and such school, or I know you know the counselor, so can you talk to them and find out? I'm like, they have not made a decision. And I think even some of the decisions that have come down, just even as late as yesterday evening, they're all still recommendations and they haven't been finalized. And people, again, like you said, you want to plan. To me, I think is even the worst planner is still wanting to know something right now. I mean, even the person who just flies by the seat of their pants and they just do whatever. They're still kind of like, hey, so what's going to happen tomorrow? You know? And so I think one of the key points that you just said, Amy, is we are dealing with something that we really have no control over. We've never seen before, and we just don't know. And I think, you know, just even if you're looking at the recent news reports and things like that of things spiking and in different cities, things going up, and governors and mayors and, you know, people in administration just kind of rolling back some things that they thought we were going to be able to move forward on, they're having to move back. So if they're up here and they're moving back, then that means we're like really really backpedaling, because we're already very hesitant, I think, in making plans because of the uncertainty. And so if we're looking at them and they're rolling back their plans, then we're like, oh, well, let's just ball that up and let's just try again, because we have no control over it. So
yeah, no control, and everyone's in such a different situation, it feels like, because again, this is where, you know, access, affordability, all of those things kind of feel like they're being wadded up and thrown out the window. But, and so how do you, like, so many times, like, I wonder, like, for someone that doesn't get on email, or someone that really only does texting or social media, like, how do you communicate with everybody when you don't have that moment of like in person, and then the networking, and then it just kind of keeps going in all these different directions? It feels actually harder in some ways. And like me, I feel like I don't want to learn any new technology. I can barely do the technology I have. You know, how do I keep up? How do I find everyone wherever they may be? And the trouble is we can't find everyone. Like, there were some students that my husband just never heard from once schools went online. And you know, you try calling, you try emailing, and then you just kind of have to wait. And it's really hard, especially when you're worried about someone. You know, you care about your students, you want to see them, but there's barriers. And I think it helps all of us. We all feel a little helpless,
yeah.
in many ways. Every time I see someone on a screen, I'm just so happy. It's like, oh, you're okay, you're alive, and you're upright, yay!
Right.
And then, you know, I weep at night for all of the people that, you know, are stuck in a harmful or in a bad situation, and they're stuck, just
Absolutely.
like all of us are stuck.
Absolutely. And so I think when you talk about where do we go from here, where are we headed, I think, you know, the access and affordability thing is really key, because as you stated earlier, we have students, you know, within the university, outside of the university, who don't have access to technology or Wi-Fi. And so you're right. I had students that it took me several weeks after that initial lockdown to just get a hold of. And then, you know, one of my tasks with my students is just a check-in. You know, how are you doing? Are you able to do your homework? Where are you doing it at? And like you said, they have other siblings, or there's only one desktop in the house, or if they have access to the technology, they have Wi-Fi. Their parents are essential workers, so now they're at home and they're the babysitter and they're the cook and they're the teacher, and they're doing all of those things. And so even for some of our college students that are in the program, we found that when COVID-19 hit and they had to leave campus, some of our students didn't have anywhere to go. Their home was their residence hall. That their home was on campus. Their food supply was on campus. Their meal plan was on campus. And so we as a program had to really dig for resources and things like that to make sure that our students did not feel like we as a program failed them, or that they felt like a failure themselves. So, again, this whole not having control can play on a person's mind of, okay, we don't have control over this, so I don't have anybody to blame. I don't know who I can blame for this, or point the finger, or who I can even reach out to for help, because nobody knows. And so it was just one of those things where um, several of my colleagues were like on the phone, like, do you have someplace to go? Do you have food? Do you have groceries? Do you, all of these things that many of us take for granted, or we have access to, or we have the provision to get. And so you're right, just, my students, they would laugh because I did the same thing, Amy. I'm like, oh my gosh, hi, how are you? Like, yes, where have you been? Are you okay? And then it's one of those things where you're asking, are you safe? Are you well? Do you have the things that you need to stay well and safe? Because of course, when all of that happened and the whole toilet paper thing and no sanitizer and things like that. And so for a college student, I mean, college students can survive off of ramen noodles and ketchup. So, or hot sauce. That's, I heard that's the thing, the Roman noodles and hot sauce. And uh-oh, man, you're giving me the eye. Was that your meal as well? So, I mean, though they are resilient and they can, they're survivors, it was still like the rug was pulled from up under them. And it was just kind of like, what do I do? Where do I go? And so the resources that had been provided for them, the campus basically shut down. The resources for those of my students that were in city schools, district schools, it was shut down. In pursuing my social work degree, I have to do placement, and I was at Licking Heights Middle School. And I know when they had to close down, they were providing lunches. Columbus City Schools were providing lunches. A lot of the school systems were providing breakfast and lunch because that's where the kids got them. So even with students pre-college or college students, a lot of their resources were wiped away. And so I think moving forward, it is going to be very important for those in administration, those in our position. Amy, is just, I mean, we all kind of sort of become social workers and have to be this type of resource library for, many of the students that we serve.
Exactly.
I see that we're getting close to time. I would love to hear, Amy, what you have to say, but I would like to put a final note in your heads for the end, which is, what structures do you think that we need set up in order to go back to even go back to start school? Like, what structures do you need to see from leadership? What structures do you need to get in place? What of the mystery needs to be taken away? And I'll point to Amy first because you had a thought. But let's leave that there as something to end with.
Yeah, well, I think the thing I was going to add was probably about the forwardness. Is the other word that has been in my mind a lot is grace. That we all need to extend grace to each other, because we don't know what resources have been yanked away. We don't know what, where, if they know where their next meal is coming from. We don't know if they've heard from the higher ups about anything. And I'm also noticing that the higher ups actually don't know any more than we do. And yeah, it's showing a lot more now. And that it's something that is it's a good reset button, that none of us are actually really in charge. We can think we are or try to act like we are, but really everyone's trying to figure it out. The laughable moment for me working in the Department of Dance was the university makes the announcement of, okay, we're going to do in-person classes again, taking all the precautions and so on and so forth. And then, you know, dance, we raised our hand and we're like, okay, great. So what are we supposed to do in dance? What is your mandate? And they were like, oh, why don't you tell us? And so, yeah, that was okay. So it's nice, that you want to know from the people that actually do the groundwork, what you would like to do, what you would feel most safe and comfortable doing. But on the other hand, it's like, but you're not giving us any parameters. And so it's like, it's a fine balance of how do you have enough information to make a decision, but really please don't make a decision for everyone else unless you know exactly what they need.
Right.
And that just makes it a big, like, tangly ball. Like there's nothing linear anymore. It's all just like this tangly ball, and I feel like only grace can eventually like flatten or smooth it out into something that people can work with.
I like that, Amy. I definitely think grace is the one thing that came to my mind while you were talking is there's definitely going to have to be open lines of communication. Like there's going to have to be communication. I really think when I was even thinking about this and thinking about, you know, the question of where do we go from here, I just think that it's so hard. And I do not envy school leadership in any way, because you truly are making a decision for hundreds and hundreds of students and families, and you can literally change the trajectory of not just one child, but an entire family. The students that we serve in our program are first generation, low income. They come from urban city schools. And so those students, they have this opportunity to make a difference, to make a change in themselves, their family, their community, and so forth. And so I think that it is really hard to pinpoint what can be done unless we are communicating. And I know some of the decisions have been made. A lot of them are recommendations. And I know, for instance, Columbus City Schools, it's a recommendation. They are, you know, asking for feedback. They have a survey on their website for parents and counselors and teachers. And things like that. My office, they sent us a survey asking what we thought, what we felt. And so I think it's going to be very important to see what others think, but even more importantly, to listen and apply what other people are thinking. I think that it's going to be hard to make a decision. You know, we can say, oh, we think that we should do this for the program. Like everyone should come back to school. Well, everyone can't come back to school because they have asthma, or they're anemic, or they have sickle cell, or they have some type of underlying condition. Okay, don't come back to school. Everybody stay home. Well, my mom and my dad work, and you know, and so finding some type of balance, I know it's going to be hard, but listening to people. And so if there's any way to have, you know, several options, you know, that people can work with, that hopefully, you know, families can fall into one of those options.
Yeah, right.
Not just two. Two is, to me, two is hard. Right. There has to be a few more than two.
Yes. I think that's what we're all kind of getting to, is that you need more than two. Political parties, you need more than two. You know, everything needs more than two, because just two legs is, I mean, for many things is not stable enough to hold a table. You need 3 legs, you need 4 legs, you need 5 legs. And so it's that hard also balance of, you cannot be all things to all people, but you gotta try, and you gotta have a compromise, and you gotta, you know, like I love one of the faculty that just retired from the Department of Dance. Whenever students were like, oh, I don't know if I should ask for help, I would say, like, if you take one step towards them with trying to communicate, they will take 10 steps toward you. Just take one step. Say one thing. Don't live in silence. Don't fester. Don't, go silently into the night, as the poet says. I mean, there's just a lot of ways you can communicate, listen, give grace, give options, but also minding your own bandwidth. Like what you said at the very beginning about self-care, how wide of a range that is for people. And I'm liking this word that I'm hearing some people say of bandwidth. Like, that's not within my bandwidth right now. That doesn't mean I can't do it. It doesn't mean I won't do it. It just means it's not manageable right now. Yeah. And I'm starting to like that expression as a way to say, it's not a no, it's not a yes, it's a maybe not right now, or maybe with slightly different parameters, or let's try it this way. So yeah, back and forth, give and take. I don't think there's ever going to be a back to anything anymore. I think there's only a, what is it going to do? What is it going to be now?
That's a fascinating note to kind of pause on. Thank you. I love that you brought up leadership. I will say, I really hope you come back next week. We are having two fantastic department leaders. We have Lawrence Jackson, who's Associate Chair of Dance here at UA, and we have Anne Cooper Albright, who chairs her program at Oberlin. So two very different schools, two very different thoughts about leadership. They will be having a conversation. What's going to happen now is I am going to invite our non-video participants to come forth, to unmute themselves and to ask questions. But before I take any questions, first, can we all please just thank Amy and Trina? That was a fantastic conversation. It gave me a whole lot to chew on, because I must admit, I was sitting here with a bias of, they must know something I don't. And you really don't. So if anything, just clearing up my perceptions of what was going on there. All right, so let's hear questions from people. Give people a moment to get their tech together. If folks are taking a minute with technology, do you mind if I ask one more question? I was looking like, okay, then I'm going to ask, so on a note, we've got students who are trying to come back, or students who are trying to start university or college for the very first time. What do you think is going to change about how they go through their courses?
I don't know. There's so many times I'm just like, I'm trying to imagine what it would be like to be 17, 18 and launching into this. And especially after being 17 or 18 and having ended your high school career the way they had to. And I'm just like, oh, it's like normally you get at least a little springboard to dive into the pool. I feel like there was no diving board. There was a wall, and there hit the wall, okay, and then fall into the pool. Like it doesn't. I hope, I want them to have the excitement. I want them to have the, I'm spreading my wings and I'm going to try something that is my journey and my choice and my life, instead of just being told what to do. But on the other hand, I'm like, but if of all, like, it's so hard to launch. It's just really hard to launch. I just have great, I just want to just say, I don't know what it's going to be, and I don't know what your experience is going to end up feeling like, but I want you to know you're not in it alone. I just keep telling students over and over, if you don't know something or you're not sure what to do, whether it's about anything about my actual job is irrelevant. Just know that you are not alone, that there are people here that want to help. There are people here that want to support you. But it's your life. I can't decide things for you.
Yeah. Yeah. We actually had our seniors write a letter to senior year. And so they were very transparent, very raw letters. And they're actually up on our website, Office of Diversity and Inclusion Young Scholars Program. Excuse me, dear senior year. Their names have been removed, but some of them were very transparent, very raw. And even in my conversations with them, my seniors that will be first year freshmen, first year college students in the fall, you could tell the air had been let out of the balloon. You know, so our students, the students that I work with are recruited actually in 8th grade. So from 8th grade until March, it was like OSU, 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 OSU. And then it's like, Ms. Trina, am I still going to be able to go to OSU? Are we going to have classes on campus? Am I going to be able to live on campus? You know, I go back to some of them are in situations where this is their out. This is I'm going to go to school. I'm going to do better. I'm going to be better. I'm not going to be a part of that situation. You know, some of them have said, you know, I may not go back home during, you know, the weekend or on breaks or, you know, things like that. And now, you know, are they going to have to? And so it is, I mean, my heart was breaking for them. And I know that their experience is going to be different. There's no way that I can tell them and honestly look them in their eyes and be like, oh my gosh, it's going to be great. You know, that's not to say that it won't be great, but it's not going to be the great that people have told you that their experience was. So I'm not going to say that it's going to be horrible, but it's definitely going to be different. And I don't know what that different looks like. Are you going to be walking around campus, you know, Ohio State's campus, the Oval in fall? What? That is an experience all in itself. What is that going to look like for them? High Street in the fall on the weekend. I mean, let's be honest. Ohio State has some nice restaurants and bars all up and down. What is that going to look like for them? Will those be closed? Even their classrooms, their lecture halls, clinicals, dance classes, you know, it's definitely going to be different. And so sharing with them what that looks like is the same as Amy. I just think as practitioners, we just have to remain positive and encouraging and just say, you know, I know this looks different. I know it's not what you thought it was going to be, but you can still do it. You can still make this happen, because I know our vice provost sent out a report that showed how the number of students who may take a gap year because of what this looks like. And so they're like, maybe if I take a gap year next year, it'll be different. And so then delaying those educational plans, when next year comes, are they still going to want to be a student? You know, and so I just think we have to be very positive and encouraging and supportive, have to advocate for them and show them how to advocate for themselves. And just, you know, just be that cheerleader in their corner that they're going to need in this process.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about grit as well. Mm-hmm. Like, how do you keep going when all the chips are down? How do you keep going when it feels like there is wall after wall after wall and door closed, door closed, door closed, door closed? Do you stop?
Right.
Or do you keep going? And so many times that, you know, it's very easy to think, well, I can do this. I can do A if B happens, or I can do C if A happened.
Right.
And we can't think that way anymore. We can't go, well, I must do this and then I must do this and this major equals this job and so on like that. I'm like, no, you have to be, how do you figure out how to be a human that can do anything you set your mind to? How do you figure out how to help others? How do you figure out how to help yourself? Like, so many things have suddenly become very abstract, but how do they find the concrete ways to make those things happen for themselves?
Right.
The gap year thing, part of me is like, I did sort of a gap year that lasted 8 years because like after high school, I'm like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I worked part-time, I volunteered part-time, I went to school part-time. And it took me, 8 years to get my undergraduate, but I got to go to Israel 3 times. I got to hold a job in a veterinary clinic and decide I do not want to be a vet. There were experiences I got by taking a non-traditional path that enriched my life and made me who I am.
But I think you brought up a good point, Amy. You had the grit to return.
Yeah.
Some of our students don't, some of them don't have that resilience, and then life happens. Yeah. And, 1 year becomes 2 and 3, and Rebecca is raising her hand.
Yeah. I see some questions going on.
Come join us.
Yeah.
Okay, hi. Thank you so much for the conversation. I realize I do have a question. I wrote I had no questions. But,
we advocate for mystery.
The metaphor that I keep feeling applies to my own activities right now is kind of like a hamster on a habit trail, like running really fast and not going anywhere. And I'm wondering if there are things that you're working very hard to do right now that you wish you could unload. That, like, if you could imagine a way to pare down and focus so that I hope I asked that question right. Like, if there are tasks that feel extraneous or unhelpful, if you ruled the world and you could say, okay, let's not do that, let's just focus on these few things, what you would unload?
Oh, Rebecca.
Yeah, that's a big one.
That is a big one. And I was going to say, even as Amy was talking, and I thought even after I said being supportive and encouraging to others, we also have to be transparent. And I thank you for being transparent, because I think that is a transparent moment when you're like, wow, I just feel like I'm going. And I know I'm not the only one that gets up in the morning and is like, what day is it? Like, what's today's date? And then me and my daughter will go back and forth, and she'll be like, it's Tuesday. I'm like, no, it's Wednesday. And, because before there were things that happen on certain days, and that's how you could gauge, what day it was. And now nothing happens on any day except the same thing. And so I think it's important that we be transparent and that we share with one another, and that we find people that we can talk to so that we can encourage one another. One of my cousins, we talk all the time, and every now and then we might get on the phone and we're both like, oh, and then we're like, hey, we both can't be down. One of us has to be the one that's pulling the other one up. And so I think one of the things is that we definitely cannot be alone in this time. You cannot isolate yourself. You cannot be alone. You cannot be on that hamster wheel by yourself. Someone has to either run with you, in front of you, behind you. Somebody has to be with you. And I think when you think about unloading stuff, I start thinking about that, like, what can I unload? What can I, what's going to alleviate, some type of stress for me, or and sometimes I think we often think of something and think, well, that's nothing. I can go ahead and do that. So every time you pick something, then you're like, well, no, I need to keep. So I'm going to tell you one very small thing that I just did before I got on the call. I texted my family and I said, I will not be cooking until Monday. It may seem small, but when I tell you there was a weight lifted, so I'm just like, and of course now it's the running joke in the house of, oh yeah, mom's not cooking. And, my husband's like, are you going to, and I'm like, but I promise something that small has really freed me, because I don't just cook for those that are in my home. I'm one of those houses that people drop by. Of course, not as much now with COVID, but my oldest son and his wife, their 2 daughters, they don't live here, but they'll drop by at any given moment and say, Mom, what did you cook? And so in my mind, I'm always thinking about, what am I cooking? Who might drop by tonight? Okay, his wife doesn't eat this. The kids are not, and so when I said I'm not cooking till Monday, honey, let me tell you, I'm being honest. It was a weight lifted. And there are other things that are more strenuous. For instance, school right now is pretty big. It's weighing pretty heavy, but I keep having self-talk, and I'm like, you know what, Trina? Not that serious. Do what you can when you can, and leave it alone. And I have to, give kudos to my husband as well. He's been very supportive, and he'll push me, and then he'll pull back. And so I think having someone, and it doesn't even have to be a family member. I mean, it could be a colleague. I know me and Amy don't talk all the time, but I promise when I see her little text come across my phone, I'm like, oh, you need that. You need that. And if there is absolutely nobody that you can find to be that person or do that for you, you have to be able to find that within. And I know sometimes I have to be honest. I had a small breakdown earlier today, and I texted my friend. I was actually working out outside in this 90-degree weather. I know. Let's just put that to the side. And she was like, okay, you've gotten too much sun. But I did. I got caught up in my emotions, and I had to talk myself out of it. I was like, okay, Trina, you have got to pull it together. I need you to pull it together. And I tell my students the same thing. I'm like, I need you to look in the mirror, have that talk with yourself. I'm okay with talking to myself. I'm just not going to answer back. But I'm okay with talking to myself and really sometimes I will lay into myself. I will get in that mirror and I will really lay into myself. And so, Rebecca, I encourage you to find someone, a colleague, a friend, a cousin, someone that you can trust and that can, just kind of pull you along in those strenuous moments. Put them onto that hamster trail with you. Like, hey, I need you to run I'm serious. I need you to run just a couple of laps with me. That's my initial thought is what comes to my head.
I would just add that the things that I've been letting go are usually the things and the to-do items. I'm one of those people that's an introvert that can function as an extrovert for a limited period of time, and then I want to go back into my cave and rejuvenate. But this has been a lot of cave time, for all of us. And
yeah.
And so how much cave is too much cave? And there's all these people that I think of, like, that I want to do, like, daily check-ins or weekly check-ins, or like, I'm going to call this person this week and this person and then life. I'm like, well, the day went by and all of a sudden I don't have time to make those connections. But I've just decided that, well, I'm doing what I can with the people that I can. And if I don't have the bandwidth to do more, I'm really trying to be okay with that. It's hard, it's hard to be okay with what, like, I have this image of like, these are the things that I want to be doing and these are all the people I want to be talking to. And then there's what I feel like I can actually do, and they do not match. And that's for me, the mystery part and the grace part is being okay with them not matching. Yeah. And lots of just breathing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that Christy J also had a comment / question. And Lexi, are you also jumping in with something to say? Okay, let's go Christy J first, and then we'll take from Lexi.
Hi everyone. I just wanted to thank everyone for this. I just wanted to first riff on a couple of things I've heard from people and just observe at a couple of levels when we first went to online only teaching in March and April. I ended up, at least on my student evaluations, getting really positive comments about how I handled it. And I think one of the big things was just that I was really honest with them about what was newfound territory, what was learning, where I made mistakes in a certain week and how I planned to rectify them, just, with unfamiliar things. And I also got an email, we all got an email from my boss even recently where she talked about some of her own challenges with focusing and staying grounded and things like that. So I think there's an impulse when you're in the type of leadership position where people are in your care in some sort of way, to want to give them the assurance that you are completely on top of everything. But also I think being candid about your vulnerability can be a really powerful thing to show as a leader as well, I think, especially now. And it's a thing I'm seeing from both of you and that I want to see more of broadly. So I just wanted to lend my voice to that. The question I wanted to ask is more about issues of equity and unseen issues of equity. Do y'all have thoughts on, things like for who may be facing more kinds of implicit pressure to return to situations in which they don't feel safe based on kind of relative degrees of job security, which students are feeling pressure to maintain certain kinds of scholarships, which students do not have safe homes in which to stay to do their learning, or who don't have access to certain kinds of technology. Just from your experiences, what are some of the kinds of unseen equity issues that we need to be talking about, and what kinds of things do those of us with any kind of power to influence administrations need to be doing to advocate for those people?
I'm gonna unmute. And also, before you start, Rebecca, did we catch all of your question? How are you doing? Great, fantastic. All right, in which case.
Yeah, I think what I'm doing in my role, which is, I don't know what kind of level administrator I am. I always think of myself as the bottom of the ladder, but that's the end that's holding everybody else up. There's the people at the top who are, the ones that are seen, or the ones that you're hearing their voice, but somehow eventually I've got to be the one to do the thing that they've decided is the right choice. And that's when I have my moment to say, hold on, what about these people? Or what about people in this kind of situation? And so that's where I really work hard. My heart is to always know what are the challenges that the different constituencies of people that I work with are facing. And I tuck them away and I remember them and bring them up when I feel that, wait a second, something's not going to be right for this person or that person. And that's my moment to speak. And many times someone will say, oh, right, okay. Then it's up to them, are they going to do something about it or give me the empowerment to do something about it? So it's always a give and take. I never feel like it's never 100%, but just by being able to say, what about, don't forget, remember that it's like I just keep chipping away at the mountain is kind of my goal. Or being that flea on the elephant that will gradually make it, keep biting it on that side so it'll go that way. That if I'm silent, that is a disservice. If I'm silent, that is wrong. But what I can do is speak. And that's where I do my best. It's never perfect, but that is my heart. That is my goal.
Christy, if I want to tag on to what Amy said, but just to make sure, part of your question, I think, was in terms of possibly what students that we may have concern about, or can you repeat that part for me just one more time? Just the equity part. Am I in the right direction, going the right direction, Christy? Maybe. Okay.
They may have had to pop away. I think it was something to do with what are the unseen issues of here we go. What are the equity issues, vulnerabilities that some of us may not be seeing that we should?
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That and
also what can faculty members, what can we do to support administrators as well?
So I think one thing that may not be seen, and something that came to my mind, excuse me, I spoke about earlier, just in terms of our students who need to be on campus. Like, their life pretty much depends on them being on campus. And this does go back to communication, but making sure that we are able to serve that population that is a need. I know for Ohio State, there was a requirement for students to live on campus for 2 years. So they reversed the decision in terms of second-year students no longer have to stay on campus. So that's fine. If a student, that may be a great choice for a student for that requirement to be relaxed because they had taken out a loan to pay to live on campus. And so now they can live at home, or they can live with a friend, or, so that's amazing. But if there is a second-year student who needs to live on campus because they don't have a home and they have the scholarship or they have the funds to pay for it, now how do we make a way for them? When I think about the pre-college students that I work with, I have students who have high anxiety. And so they had already started to pull away from school anyway, and was missing more school. And then there's a program in the Columbus City Schools, VCAP, where you can do online schooling. And so some students, they were doing that. And so if a student has high anxiety, or they do not function well in crowds or classrooms or that type of setting for whatever reason, that administration, faculty, teachers, professors, whoever, need to be okay with these decisions for these students. I also had an LGBTQ student who was pulling away from school as well because of being bullied. And so them working from home, they were ecstatic. They were like, hey, this is the best thing smoking. And so just recognizing that our students at either level, pre-college or college, they have needs that even go outside of academia. We are, Ohio State is academic. Dublin City Schools, Hilliard, Columbus City Schools, Canal, all of these schools are just that, schools. We think academic, but we have to think beyond that scope, especially in this time, because this COVID-19 has uncovered so many I guess, unequal opportunities or the lack of equity, I can say. And so now we're understanding that, wow, our students didn't do their homework at home because they did not have the resource to do it at home. They could only do it at school. Or wow, that student, I had one student who had a really bad disease that kept her away from school. And unfortunately, her principal just, I don't know what the communication was or whatever, but they just did not, they were not okay with her missing a lot of school, but she bought doctor's excuses. She had reasons for being out. And so we have to extend that grace. We have to be transparent. We have to communicate. We have to listen. I can't say it enough. You know, everybody does not like Captain Crunch cereal. Okay. I mean, you know, it's just, it's not one size fits all. And so we have to be, again, as faculty, as administrators, as teachers, counselors, social workers, principals, whoever it is, we have to listen and find out how. Now, of course, we can't have 1,000 different options, but how can we, in some way, shape, or form, make sure that we are making the resources and the options available for those students in need? And it's not based on culture or race or gender or sexual orientation. It is solely and strictly based on that person's need. This is what I need because of this.
Thank you.
Malleability. I think that might be another good word of, like, that school is just this sliver of our lives, really. And so, and it's affected by all of the other pieces of the pie. And so, yes, you can't really have, like Trina said, a solution that fits everybody, but if you have, like, what is the baseline to help people do what they need at minimum, and then you have the, you know, hopefully just the above the baseline kinds of things. But if the baseline is where we can be as equitable as possible, and then everything else can kind of be cream or bonus or whatever you want to think of it as, to help more. But we've helped, but now let's help. That, yeah, you need more options is really what it comes down to, because everyone is different, which is beautiful. So many things about, you know, differences that are coming up because of COVID. We always knew that they were there. They were like this rankly bit underneath all of us. But now it's like, wow, we really need to do something about this.
Right.
You know?
Absolutely.
But it's what I'm hoping, this is the optimist in me, but I'm hoping that what we see is that they're not really rankly bits, they're texture bits. They're things that make us richer. They're things that make us more aware. They're things that make us more empathetic. They're things that make us more considerate. They're things that make us respect each other more because of those differences, those textures.
Right.
Yeah.
Did we answer, Christy? I'm really big on making sure that I answer questions.
I also want,
Absolutely, you answered my question very much so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I want to just acknowledge, so I have a dilemma because Lexi, I know, also had a question, but I also want to recognize that we're 10 minutes over time and you are both volunteering your time. So Lexi, is your question one that we can put in the Facebook group to open source or have answered via email?
My questions have been thoroughly answered by the panel and the other two fantastic questions. So thank you for everyone's time.
Fantastic. In which case I will move to our closing thing, which is what I do, which is completely non-compulsory, but I'd just like to turn off the recording and give everybody a chance to breathe, maybe network, swap email addresses. Are we ready for that right now?
Absolutely.
All right, before I do that, I thank you so much both, so much again, for giving your time, for giving such like genuine answers and yeah, useful information and inspiration for what we're doing next. All right.
Trina.
Hey.